Hello. All right, I think we are live. I'm just going to make sure Instagram is going live as well, and then I'm going to forget that Instagram exists. Um all right, I think that's working. Hey everybody. I hope you're having a good night. I hope you're enjoying, if this is like the last of your holiday weekends, then good luck going back to work. I guess I'll get this out of the way now. If you want to support this channel, you can always go right there to patreon.com/Hemant to support whatever it is I do. Couple of quick things. I started the Revelation series last Sunday. The first episode is up on this YouTube channel if you're watching it on YouTube. So you could check that out. That should be a weekly thing from here on out. You can also, if you have a question, leave a super like. You can donate that way too, or just leave a question and we'll get to it between stories. I have Den, who is helping out as always with moderation. So if you have a question or someone's trolling, we'll take care of that as best we can. And I look forward to your questions. I don't have that many stories. I'm looking at this. That doesn't mean we're going to be done early, but I'm going to try to get through as many of these as I can because there's so much good, juicy stuff here today. I figured, why don't we start off with Kim Davis? Because for some reason, she is still in the news, even though it's not 2015 anymore. But she's in the news for a glorious reason, which is she lost another court battle somehow. I didn't know she still had court battles to lose, but she's still losing over and over. And it makes my heart grow every single time it happens. This is the headline from the Associated Press. A former clerk who refused to issue marriage licenses must pay $260,000 in fees and costs, a judge rules. And I want to explain to you where that amount is coming from, why it's happening now, because it's so much fun when you actually hear the full story. So let me back up for a second, because I know I'm going to post this clip at some point online. And if you were not following this story over the many, many years it has been going on, Kim Davis is the evangelical Christian who used to be the clerk, the county clerk in Rowan County, Kentucky. And in 2015, just after the Obergefell ruling came down from the Supreme Court and same-sex marriage was legal nationwide, gay couples would come to her office and say, we want a marriage license, because they had a right to it at that point in Kentucky. And she said basically, no, I'm a Christian. I will not sign your marriage certificate, even though she only has one job, basically, and it's to sign marriage certificates. And so she was blocking the civil rights of these people. And she did it because she said she was Christian and she thought that granted her some sort of immunity from doing her job. So, long story short, and it is a very long story, a couple of those gay couples sued and they said, you can't get in the way of our civil rights like that. In one of those cases, a jury actually did not rule in the couple's favor. I'm not sure why, but that is the way juries work. Sometimes they just didn't see the evidence that it was something illegal. But, and this is where we get to today's story, the other same-sex couple that sued, they won their case. Actually, last year, U.S. District Judge David Bunning ruled that she broke the law when she refused to sign their marriage license, on account of her Christian bigotry. So then, after that judge said she broke the law, the question before a jury last year was, well, how much money should the gay couple get in damages? And basically, the two men received $50,000 each. That's what a jury ruled. They said each of those men who had their civil rights denied, Kim Davis owed them $50,000 apiece. Liberty Counsel, the right-wing group that represented Kim Davis, they argued, hey, she has qualified immunity. You can't sue her. She's a government official. And the jury's like, no. We're relying on the Supreme Court verdict of fuck around and find out. And she's about to find out that she does not have qualified immunity. Liberty Counsel said they would appeal that decision, and that went nowhere because Kim Davis broke the law. Okay, so that's where we were at the end of last year. The gay couple won. This case is over. We're finally done hearing about Kim Davis, right? But no, not just because they were appealing this thing for all of eternity. It's because there was something that had not been worked out, which is now that Kim Davis has lost, not only does she owe those men $50,000 each, her side owes their lawyers a lot of money because you made those guys' lawyers have to do all this work. And every time you appeal the ruling, they got to do more work. And this has been going on for years. So the question is, how much money does Kim Davis' side owe the lawyers? We already know they do. The question is how much. Now, the gay men's lawyers, and there's a bunch of them, basically, I'm going to quote to you what they said. They said, we want $246,026.40 in attorney's fees and $14,058.30 in expenses because we had to do a lot of work over many years. Kim Davis's team tried to say, we're going to give you $100,000, no more. So this is the question. Do they get like $260,000 or do they get $100,000? And this is the argument that both sides put in front of the judge. And this is where it gets really amusing because I'm going to show you some of the stuff this judge wrote because you could tell he's so done with Kim Davis at this point. All right. So check this out. This is the beginning of his ruling in this case. And listen to what he says right here. The procedural history of this case is well documented in the record, and the court need not reiterate it in detail here. I'm not going to tell you what happened over the past 9 years. But then he says, in sum, following extensive discovery, multiple motions, dispositive and otherwise, 4 appeals to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, 1 petition for a writ of certiorari to the United States Supreme Court, and a 3-day jury trial, this case is on the eve of final resolution. 1 issue remains: attorney's fees and expenses. This judge is like, you guys have put me through so much. I just want to be done with this. We are so close. Can we please finish this up already? Which I love the subtle shade there. The bottom line, though, is that the judge says throughout this ruling that the requests that the plaintiff's lawyers have made for costs, the gay men's lawyers have made for all these costs, he basically says they're all reasonable. He actually says in this ruling, he's not going to, quote, engage in micro litigation, nor is he, quote, inclined to split hairs. He says, I'm not here to say, that this request was too much or too little or whatever. His job, he says, is to say, does this sound about right for what lawyers have to do in cases like these? And he boils down to, yeah, it all seems pretty reasonable. And sometimes when Kim Davis's lawyers try to fight that, the judge let them have it. Here's one example of that. I'll show you this right here. Okay, look at this top paragraph first. Plaintiffs were represented in this matter by a couple of lawyers, yada, yada, yada. Plaintiffs seek an award based upon a rate of $375 an hour for one lawyer and $275 for another. Kim Davis's lawyer says no, they object to these rates. They want to reduce it to $350 and $250 because that's what those lawyers said they cost years ago. What does the judge say about all that? The court finds that the rates sought by plaintiffs are reasonable. The court is not inclined to reduce these rates based upon what was found to the prevailing market rates 6 years ago. He bold-faced 6 years ago. In short, he's saying, yeah, they did request a lower rate 6 years ago, but also a lot of time has passed. And it makes sense that they would ask more now because of inflation, because of other issues. Like, I'm not going to go after them and give you credit because they asked for a lower amount years ago. Like, the judge is just not taking any of Kim Davis's lawyers' arguments. You know what I mean? And the bottom line is when he goes through all the complaints that Kim Davis's side is making, he doesn't want to give them any leeway. Uh, and here is what it comes down to at the very end. Let me show you this. This is at the very end of the document. uh, Plaintiffs are awarded every penny they wanted in attorney's fees, and they were awarded every penny they wanted in expenses. That's it. That's where the $260-ish thousand lawyers' fees and expenses are coming from. Because this judge is like, yeah, they want it, they will get it, because nothing in here seems weird. They had to work a lot. I think one of my favorite response, like if you were asking yourself, what is Kim Davis's attorneys going to do about this? You know they're not just going to say, "Well, okay, I guess we lost this case," because they've never done that repeatedly over the past several years, even though they've repeatedly lost the case. Every time they have lost, they just said, "Well, you're not the final word. We're going to ask our buddies at a higher court," and then the higher court's like, "Yeah, dog, you lost." And they're like, "Well, we're going to ask the Supreme Court." And the Supreme Court's like, "Yeah, I know who we are, but we're also not going to handle this because this isn't even like remotely controversial. This isn't on the fence. She just broke the law." Like, no one wanted to deal with their shit. So after this ruling came down that they now owe all these legal fees, what did Liberty Counsel say after all this? Oh, yes, you guessed it. Kim Davis will ask court to reverse the verdict yet again. And this is what they say here. This latest judgment now allows Liberty Counsel to ask the court to reverse the jury's verdict against Davis because there was insufficient evidence to award the plaintiff's monetary damage. If the appeal is denied, Liberty Counsel will then appeal the case to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeal. Whatever. They're complaining about it again. That's the bottom line here. They think they're going to take this up to a higher court and then they won't have to pay anything. Here's what I think is actually happening, though. Liberty Counsel is one of those right-wing legal groups where they only hire the worst attorneys they can find because they're not interested in the smart ones. The smart ones would never work for a group like Liberty Counsel. The reason Liberty Counsel is like, we're going to appeal this, is because they keep sending out fundraising messages to their followers, their base, their members, saying, "You guys, this liberal court ruled against us again, so give us money so we can keep fighting this." And that's it. It doesn't matter how strong their legal case is. It's not strong. They have no case. They just need to keep like milking this cash cow that is Kim Davis. And so they're not going to stop anytime soon. They're going to take their fans for all they are worth. And that's what they're doing here too. Look, it's not like they're going to have a hard time coming up with this money. I don't think Kim Davis is especially wealthy on her own, but it would be very easy for her to start up like the Give, Send, Go, GoFundMe type of page where she's like, "You guys, I'm a Christian martyr. Remember me with the hair? Give me money so I can fight back, and I need to raise this because they're persecuting me." I have no doubt she could do that, and she could raise all the money she needs in a heartbeat. The issue here isn't the money. The issue is that Liberty Counsel cannot let this case go because it's been their baby for like 9 years. So they're just going to keep fighting it until they literally cannot anymore. Um, the one thing I do appreciate about this case being in the news again this week is it gives us a chance to talk about Kim Davis again and how much of a hypocrite she is. Because remember, her whole reason that she would not sign these same-sex marriage licenses is because she wanted to preserve the sanctity of marriage, and gay people cannot do that. Jesus hated the gays. But remember, what is Kim Davis's personal life like? Let me remind you. I'm just going to quote this directly from myself here. She is a woman who, in chronological order, married husband 1, had twins with husband 3, divorced husband 1, married husband 2, divorced husband 2, married husband 3, divorced husband 3, and then remarried husband 2. That's what Kim Davis did. That's apparently what Jesus wanted. And when people pointed that out to her, as many people did over the years, she's like, well, none of that counts because, quote, God still wasn't in the picture because she wasn't born again until she remarried husband two, something like that. Like she didn't find Jesus until 2011, you see. So nothing that happened before then should count. And how dare you use any of that against her? She actually wrote in her memoir, yeah, she wrote a memoir, that the whole hypocrisy charge was divine irony because basically her argument was, look, God took a woman married 4 times and used her to defend marriage against the gays. And isn't that so mysterious of him? That was basically what her book was. Um, so I don't know. I don't know why she's stuck with Liberty Counsel. Not good lawyers. But they fumble the ball every single time and then keep fundraising off of her name. I don't think she sees any pennies of any of this. But whatever. She likes being used by these people and she keeps losing. And she is forever going to be a punchline for the rest of us. Uh, Not because of how she looks, because I don't think that's fair to go after her for that, but because she's fighting this awful case and thinking that her bigotry somehow makes her valid, makes her complaint valid. And it's not. It's just Christian hate. And so if she thinks that's what she's going to be known for the rest of her life, which is a hell of a way to leave a legacy. But that's the decision she made. She stuck by it for 9 years. She hasn't changed one bit. I haven't seen her make any statements in response to any of this. She's kind of gone quiet for the past few years, as far as I can tell. But good. Let her lawyers speak for her because they're awful and they keep losing. So that's where Kim Davis is at. What questions, comments do we have about Kim Davis? Where did she end up? Didn't she lose her reelection? Yeah, this is interesting. She actually ran for reelection to be the county clerk. Um, and if I remember correctly, one of the gay men who sued her and is one of the guys who just won that case against her, he actually ran against her too. But he lost in the primary, if my memory serves me correctly. And the Democrat who ran against Kim Davis, I believe, ended up winning that election. And so she lost. She lost her seat because even in like rural Kentucky, they were tired of getting embarrassed by Kim Davis. So I don't think she's run for anything else ever since, if I have that correct. And she's just at home doing whatever it is she does, which is, I don't know, nothing of value to other people, it seems like. Not to mention 9 years of not divorcing out of spite. Imagine if their relationship ran its course and they're like, we can't split up or Kim Davis wins. I would be very curious to know what that gay couple is up to. Like, I hope they're doing okay. I hope they are having the marriage they wanted to have. Not that a divorce would mean any of the stuff they did was not valid or anything, but I hope they're taking a victory lap. They deserve many. They should be in shape from all the running they are doing from taking victory laps around Kim Davis. It is so surreal to remember that I was on the opposite side of the issue back when this whole Kim Davis debacle first started. Very glad I finally came to my senses as of maybe 2 years ago. Hey, congratulations, Spencer. Good for you. I would like to know if there was one thing that did it for you. What pushed you over the edge? Was it just one thing, or was it a series of small things like the cognitive dissonance that made you think, oh, I don't think I can do this anymore. I think my side might be the wrong one here. I would like to know that. Maybe we can address that in one of the next comments or something like that. But congratulations to you and welcome to the light side, or the dark side, if you will. And with that, let me run over. Let me go to a different story that is also bananas. Okay, so this takes us to Oklahoma, because if Oklahoma Republicans are able to pass a newly proposed bill, every public school classroom in the state will be forced to display a copy of the Ten Commandments. This is apparently how the GOP plans to improve the education system, ranked number 48 in America, according to US News and World Report. This is the bill I'll share with you here. It was just proposed by Jim Olson, who is a state House member. Jim Olson says in this bill um, that basically, starting in the 2024-2025 school year, every public school shall display in each classroom of the school a durable poster or framed copy of the Ten Commandments. Let me show you what this bill actually looks like here, because it's kind of amazing how in depth it goes. Let me make sure you can see this all. But look at this. It says the poster or framed copy of the Ten Commandments required by this bill, it has to include the text of the Ten Commandments. And by the way, I wrote it out for you in a size and font that is legible to a person with average vision from anywhere in the classroom. It has to be 16 inches wide and 20 inches tall. And then he actually says, here's what the Ten Commandments posters have to say. He literally spells it out all the way down here. And I did count, like, it's not like it's 10 lines long, which makes it really confusing to know which the parts are the commandments to this all. But it also says if you don't have a poster or framed copy of the Ten Commandments, you got to accept a privately donated poster or framed copy as long as it meets all the requirements and does not contain any additional content. That's the gist of what this bill says. So this is what he thinks is good. This is what everybody wants. And I'm going to get to one thing he forgot to mention in his bill in just a second. But needless to say, the whole point of this is to inject Christianity into public schools. There was a federal judge once, a couple years ago. He once said there was a Pennsylvania public school that had a Ten Commandments monument outside the building. And the judge said, wait, that's all you have outside the building? That's totally illegal. And what that judge said when he declared it illegal was there is no context plausibly suggesting that this plainly religious message has any broader secular meaning. And I think that applies here too. Like, you can't make an argument that this is good for the kids. There's nothing in the Ten Commandments that suggests it is secular, that they're promoting universal values. This is a Christian list written for Christians, just beginning with the very first line, which, again, as you could tell, look at the line, the Ten Commandments. I am the Lord thy God. He didn't just put that in the list. He literally capitalized the words, I am Lord. Like, that is nothing if not Christian grammar right there. You know what I mean? So there's no secular argument you can make on behalf of this. It's an endorsement of Christianity. Obviously, the government has no business telling students what religious rules they ought to live by. And it's not like this list has a purpose. Like, what is the educational benefit of telling kids they can't have any other gods before the one true Christian God? Or that they can't make false idols? Or that they can't take God's name in vain? Or that they have to rest on the Sabbath? Or that they can't have sex with people they're not married to, which is a weird thing to tell kindergartners, apparently. Like, if you saw that in a children's book, these conservative Christians would want to ban it. But now they want to put that line in every classroom in the state. Like, why do kindergartners need to be told not to commit adultery? And who are the teachers who are asking for this? None of them. No one needs this in the classroom. No one is saying, man, math class would be so much easier if only these kids knew that in the back of the room was a poster saying, thou shalt not kill. That would stop all the school shootings. Because if there's one thing we know about the shooters, it's that they love to read. Like, so it's not just a dumb idea. It's illegal. And it's especially appalling in Oklahoma because just 5 years ago, they had a massive teachers strike. This is from NPR. Even saying 5 years after the walkouts, Oklahoma's GOP has changed its tune. There was one passage I wanted to show you here. Look at how things have gotten worse and better in some areas. Oklahoma's record-breaking teacher shortages have gotten worse. Emergency certifications have more than doubled since the walkout. And the state almost quadrupled its use of adjunct teachers in the 2021-2022 school year. Those are teachers who are not held to any state requirements when it comes to teaching certifications and college degrees. They have these teachers who are just not trained to be in the classroom, but they need bodies in there. Teachers saw some pay increases and increased classroom funding over the last 5 years, but Oklahoma still ranks in the bottom half of all states when it comes to pay, and per pupil spending is still among the lowest in the country. And all of that's to say, if you're a teacher in Oklahoma, I mean, bless you, you're doing amazing work. But also, what they need is not what this Republican legislature is giving them. They need better pay. They need more help. They need to make it easier to get people certified so that they can be in the classroom and that they know what they're doing in the classroom. What they don't need is another dose of Jesus in their classroom, because why the hell would that help anybody? It wouldn't. So it's just a pointless bill just to make life worse for teachers, because some of them are going to protest it. Some of them don't want it in their classroom. It does nothing of value, but this is the best Republicans offer because they don't want to actually fix any problems. They exist as a party to make everybody else's life worse. That's the ethos of the party. And I should say, as far as Oklahoma goes, the state, I should say the judiciary and the voters, the people there, have actually been decent on this matter. The legislature sucks, but the people and the judges have not been. And I'll give you a quick rundown here. Oklahoma had a 10 Commandments monument outside the state capitol, but the state Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional in 2015. So what did Republicans do? They tried to pass a constitutional amendment to get rid of the line in the Constitution that said we should do church-state separation and you can't use taxpayer money to promote religion. That's what the Supreme Court cited in the state to declare that monument unconstitutional. So legislators tried to pass an amendment to get rid of the church-state separation clause, tried to get rid of the Blaine Amendment in their Constitution. What did voters do in 2016? They rejected that change, which was the right move. That's amazing. Good for them. So what did Republicans do then? They tried passing a law allowing displays of historically significant documents outside public spaces. So that would include the 10 Commandments, but also the Magna Carta. And that bill just didn't go. It passed in the state house. The state Senate just didn't take it up. I don't think they wanted to make it an issue after they got whooped in 2015 and 2016. So good on the voters, good on the judges, kind of good on the state Senate for just not doing a damn thing. Because in Oklahoma, if the Republican Party doesn't do anything, it's a win for the people of Oklahoma. So you would think, if you're a Republican in Oklahoma, the last thing you would want to do right now is just blatantly shove Jesus into every classroom, push your religion into every school. But no, this idiot, Jim Olson, is just going full speed ahead with it. And it makes no sense whatsoever. A couple notes about this. Jim Olson, here's what he's best known for in Oklahoma. He has sponsored bills to punish doctors who provide abortion care to women. He wanted to, wait for this, he wanted to reduce the penalty for people who unlawfully carry weapons. He thought we were too lenient on them. He also wanted to ban the teaching of the 1619 Project, which is the New York Times series of articles about how slavery was kind of foundational to who we are as a nation, which is true. He didn't want people knowing about that, so he wanted that banned. He also, this is appalling, he cited the Bible as justification. Let me back up for a second. In Oklahoma, they were thinking about passing a bill that would ban corporal punishment, spanking, paddling, slapping, specifically on disabled students in schools. And he came in, Jim Olson, and said, no, you guys, We still got to be able to hit them in schools. Why? Because the Bible says, spare the rod, spoil the child. He used the Bible to fight to hit kids with disabilities in schools because Jesus told him to. That's the sort of dude we are talking about here. And what's also scary is, if any of you have followed the news in Oklahoma for a while now, they have a state superintendent of public instruction, like the superintendent of public schools. His name is Ryan Walters, and he's a Christian nationalist. And he's all on board with shoving Jesus into schools. This guy, Ryan Walters, has already helped approve the nation's first religious charter school. There's a lawsuit over that as we speak. Ryan Walters promoted the use of PragerU material in public school classrooms, which is right-wing propaganda. He formed a faith committee to help tell the legislature what to do about religion. Guess what? That faith committee only had conservative Christians on it. And you know what they said the schools needed? 10 Commandments. And now Jim Olson is acting on that recommendation. That's not to say every Oklahoma lawmaker is insane. There are 3 awesome Oklahoma lawmakers in the state. One of them is this Democrat, Mickey Dolenz, who said this on Twitter/X/ whatever the hell this site is now called. Oklahoma lawmaker Jim Olson, who cited the Bible on the House floor to justify the spanking of children with disabilities, has introduced a bill that would mandate the display of the 10 Commandments in all Oklahoma classrooms. State-endorsed religious indoctrination is unconstitutional, idolatrous, which violates a commandment, violates parents' rights, and contradicts the teachings of the deity he claims to worship. Dolenz went on to say, and I love this too, Christian nationalist politicians believe they have divine authority to enact laws based on their interpretation of the Bible, forcing their religious beliefs on society. This is unconstitutional, exclusionary, and dangerous. By endorsing a state-sanctioned religion, they undermine the foundational principle of religious freedom upon which the United States was built upon. Yeah, that guy gets it. That's fantastic. And again, that's an Oklahoma lawmaker. Yeah, he's a Democrat, and there's only 3 of them left in the state. But there are people fighting the good fight. I just wish there were more of them. Another thing I wanted to point out here is that Jim Olson made a big mistake. I told you that he specified in his bill, you have to make the posters this particular size. It has to be legible to an average visioned person, from a distance. So you can't try to give me a size 6 font and hide it away. He also said, here are the words. I wrote them out for you. You got to include this stuff and you can't include anything else. So he's taken care of covered all his bases, right? No. You know what he forgot to say in there? The 10 Commandments has to be written in English. He forgot to say that. And there is an activist in Florida, his name is Chaz Stevens, who's been really good about catching those mistakes. He actually shared with me a poster he made for another state. This is what he plans to share with Oklahoma classrooms if and when this bill passes. That is legible. That poster, when it's modified a bit, it would fit the rectangle you need. It's just written in Arabic. That would probably piss off a lot of conservative Christians, but it would follow the law if the bill becomes a law. Chaz also shared with me one other poster that he's excited about. This is also the 10 Commandments. I'll take my face out of this. This is also a 10 Commandments poster that Chaz created that fits all the rules laid out in that bill. But as you could see, he highlighted just a couple of fun words for himself. Hey, kids, you need a reminder of the 10 Commandments? Here, let me tell you what you should remember. Kill, adultery, steal. Thanks, Christians, for making that happen. So those are courtesy of Chaz Stevens. We'll see if he actually does have a GoFundMe where he's raising money for these posters. He's trying to make them now in case the law passes. I'm going to share that link in the comments. in case any of you are inclined to donate. But again, the law has not passed yet. It's just a bill right now. It may pass in the Oklahoma House, but again, I don't know what the Oklahoma Senate's going to do, even though it's a Republican dominated majority there. So we'll see. And the last thing I just wanted to bring up about this story is that you may recall that Texas actually tried to pass an identical bill to this one last year. And there was a fantastic Democrat, a Christian named James Tallarico, who tried his damnedest to call out the hypocrisy of the Republicans who are pushing for this Ten Commandments bill. And if you Google his name, James Tallarico, when it came time to talk about this bill in committee, he actually pointed out, I'm going to share this with you here. Candy Noble was the name of the Texas Republican who was sponsoring this bill. He said on there, I just want to walk through a couple. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Are you aware the legislature is scheduled to meet this Saturday? And the Republican said, I am aware of that. James Tallarico says, so that would be violating the Ten Commandments. I contend that that is, you're right. Thou shalt not kill. Are you aware the legislature has refused to outlaw the death penalty? Like, he just went down the list one by one and pointed out how their own legislature, the Republicans in the legislature, already violated all these commandments. And that's before you get into, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, which, hey, some of those Texas lawmakers are already in the news for scandals involving that. What about the idea that the Ten Commandments posters are a form of idolatry? Doesn't that violate a commandment or two? I mean, there's a bunch of secular reasons you should not have the Ten Commandments in public schools, but there are some good lawmakers who are pointing out all the religious reasons you don't want it in there either. So I don't know. I don't know if they'll succeed in Oklahoma this time around. The Texas bill did not become law. That also kind of passed by the wayside, but you never know. So in Oklahoma, we will see what happens. And if it does pass, there are malicious but lovely ways to provide counter arguments to it in the classroom. And I'm sure students will figure out even more clever ways to deal with it. One thing I did find amazing before we wrap this up is that nowhere in the proposed bill from Jim Olson, nowhere does it say what the punishment would be for a teacher or a school that did not comply with the law. You would think they would say, like, oh, if your school doesn't do it, we're going to take away any state funding for your school. There's nothing like that in the bill. Not that I want to give them ideas, but I'm saying if there's no punishment, there's really no incentive for teachers to go along with it. So we'll see about that. That's all. I'm going to pause there on this particular story. And clearly pushing God on the kids is more important than helping educate next generations. Oklahoma elected officials can't even do the bare minimum. The bar was at the floor and they can't clear it. I think you're right, Michael. Yep, it's embarrassing. And I feel so bad. The who gets screwed by this? It's the kids in Oklahoma. And the teachers and the people who actually dedicate their lives to helping other people. They're the ones who get hurt by the legislators who don't care about any of this stuff. It's awful. It doesn't need to be this way, but Republicans want it to be like this. All right. I'm going to go. This is a story I have not posted yet. I will post it soon. And I don't even know necessarily where I'm going with it, but I want to lay this out for you because I just find this interesting. So this is about Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, I live in Illinois. I don't think I've ever been to a town hall where a presidential candidate was doing a meet and greet or a rally, because why would a presidential candidate waste their time in Illinois? It's a blue state. We know what's going to happen in November in a presidential race, no matter who's on the ballot. You know what I mean? So presidential candidates really don't come to Illinois. They barely put commercials on relative to other offices that people may be running for. Obviously, in Iowa, it's a very different story. They have the Iowa caucuses happening in 2 weeks. Every presidential candidate, at least this year on the Republican side, except for Donald Trump, who just shows up when he feels like it, the other candidates are all going all across the state. They will make a whole deal about I visited all 99 counties in Iowa. Vivek Ramaswamy is I've done it twice. But they all go to all these towns in Iowa and they meet with the voters because they want to win the delegates and they want to get these people to vote for them in the upcoming caucuses. So if you live in Iowa, you actually get a chance to meet these presidential candidates in person every 4 years, which that's kind of cool as a political nerd, right? That's a neat idea, even if it's not for your preferred party. You could still talk to them and question them, have a conversation with them. I don't know. I've never had that opportunity, but that seems really interesting. There are a bunch of questions I would love to ask some of these candidates. You know what I mean? And that's true of Democrats and Republicans. So there is a guy in Iowa. His name is Justin Scott. I talked about him on the live stream a week or two ago because there was a nativity scene outside a fire department in one city. And he's the one who basically ratted them out and said, you can't have just a nativity outside, city property. And he fixed it. Like, they eventually put up a Santa and a reindeer to try to mix it up or something. Anyway, that's Justin Scott. He's a longtime Iowa resident, an atheist, an activist, a good guy. I like him. And for several presidential cycles now, he has actually made it a habit to go to a lot of these events and ask pressing questions about what these candidates are going to do about church-state separation. He's asked Democrats, like, what are you going to do to appeal specifically to atheist voters whose votes they need if they want to win? Because you know as well as I do, Republicans obviously don't, but Democrats don't either. None of them will pander to atheists. They don't brag about their commitment to church-state separation. They will wear their religious faith on their sleeve no matter which party they're in. So good on Justin for doing that. So, of course, this time around, it's the Republicans who are traipsing through Iowa. And so yesterday, Vivek Ramaswamy happened to be in the city of Waverly. Justin is not far from Waverly. So he decided to jump in to the discussion, to the town hall, and ask a question. Now, I ask all of you, think about this. If you had a chance to ask Vivek Ramaswamy a question, what would you ask him? Because if you're like me and you've sat through those awful kiddie table debates that they've had with everyone except Trump, like, Vivek Ramaswamy has a habit of just talking and talking. He's very much like confident about everything, but right about nothing. He just loves the sound of his own voice. He's smug, he's arrogant, condescending. Like, he just oozes creeper vibes everywhere he goes. But also, he's good at talking. Like, he's smooth. They can ask a question and he'll just avoid it and then talk for a minute or two about something totally unrelated and make it sound like he answered the question, even though he totally didn't. And I'm embarrassed and annoyed by that as a fellow brown person. You know what I mean? So anyway, what would you ask Vivek Ramaswamy if you had a chance? So what Justin wanted to ask him about is something Vivek Ramaswamy has talked about on the campaign trail many times, which is he has a list of 10 truths. And I will share with you, this is the version he posted on LinkedIn, which is where all the cool kids go. But here are the 10 truths. God is real. There are two genders. I'm just scrolling down here like, what else do we have here? Reverse racism is racism. Parents determine the education of their children. Whatever. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. All right, whatever. Justin went to number one. He said, if you're hyping up this idea that God is real, like, don't you even want to try to appeal to the ever-growing population of non-religious voters out there? And I think that's a fair question, right? Because even if you're a Republican, Republicans were already starting at like 2% atheists, but that number is rising. So even if you're a Republican, what are you going to do, Vivek, to try to reach out to people who don't share the dominant religious views? I think that's a fair question. So I'm going to share with you part one of their exchange. Let me share this with you. It's only about a minute long, and then we'll talk about it after that.
The question I have that's bigger is what actual line could you tell an atheist, secular, a satanic voter that would appeal to them that's not a kitschy conservative catchphrase?
Okay, I'll tell you this.
The wokeism and all that. No, what we see is a government that is propping up Christianity, that is excusing Christianity's bad actors, that isn't doing anything to fight Christian nationalism.
So here's what I believe. There may be points in our history where that would be applicable. Respectfully, I don't think that's actually a major threat in this country compared to the threats that I named. But
Christian nationalism.
But
you don't feel that's
I don't feel like that's a major threat right
January
now.
6th.
I feel like wokeism
Christian
is
nationalism.
and transgenderism is. But you asked me to say something that will allow to speak to people who are atheists.
If there's an atheist watching this right now.
Yeah, let me actually just address your question. You are free to live your life and practice your faith or absence thereof freely without anybody standing in your way. Because that's what the First Amendment of the Constitution ensures.
That's part one. I will show you part two in a second. But the question again was, what line could you tell us as an atheist, a secular, satanic voter, what have you, that would appeal to them? And what did Vivek Ramaswamy say, like, in response to that? Good luck trying to figure out what his answer was in that whole word salad thing. Things he mentioned, he said, Vivek Ramaswamy said Christian nationalism, he doesn't feel like that's a threat at all. He said, quote, I don't feel like that's a major threat right now. I feel like wokeism and transgenderism is. Which, how, in what way? That's the sign of someone who is online too much and only in certain, filters, only in certain right-wing bubbles, because, oh my God, what the hell are you talking about? And then when he said, what would you say to someone who's an atheist? He said, you're free to live your life and practice, yada, 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 because that's what the First Amendment ensures. And that, then he just went off on that. Like, thanks for telling us we're allowed to exist in society. I'm not sure why that would make me want to vote for him, because everyone could say that and mean it. Like Donald Trump would say, yeah, you can believe whatever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. The point is, Vivek Ramaswamy has been promoting Christian nationalism. He has a lot of supporters who are Christian nationalists. And despite being a Hindu himself, he's actively promoted Christian right talking points. So, like, I don't think he answered the question at all. But then he kept talking. I'm going to play for you the rest of the conversation with Justin right here.
And if I have one job as your next president, it is to swear an oath to that Constitution and to keep it. Here's how you'll know that I know what I'm talking about. This was modeled on Thomas Paine's work, Common Sense. People are familiar with that. That was actually the leaflets they handed out to start the American Revolution. I'll tell you about one thing about Thomas Paine. He was an atheist, actually. So one of the men who started the American Revolution, most of our founding fathers were Christian. Thomas Jefferson was a deist. He's my favorite founding father, probably my favorite president. I look up and find the most common cause with him. Less so with Thomas Paine, but I respect the hell out of him, because he too, without him, the American Revolution wouldn't have happened. So I recognize that about our history, and I recognize that about our Constitution. And I recognize that even people of diverse faiths in this country were bound together by the ideals enshrined in that Constitution. And I will fight to the death for actually reviving those constitutional ideals in this country. And what's in that First Amendment is, you may not agree with what I have to say, but I will defend to the very end your right to say it. That's America. That is what makes America great. That is what makes America itself. And so, yes, can we disagree on some questions and still have you support me as your U.S. president? Not as your pastor, but as your president. I think darn right you can. That's my answer.
This might help you. Yes or no, just to finish it up. Do you believe our rights come from God or from man?
I believe that our natural rights,
secular democracy,
our natural rights outside of a government come from God. Our natural rights. In the context of a constitutional republic, the rights that we enjoy are the ones enshrined and codified in our Constitution. And I recognize the difference between being a president and a pastor.
Thank you.
Okay. So he said some stuff in there that was like, fine. And again, nothing he said would ever make me want to vote for him. He's like a smooth talker with horrible ideas. A lot of style, no substance. But also Justin's question was ultimately ignored, wasn't it? Like, he wanted to know, what would you say to atheists to get them to vote for you? And he just said a bunch of generic BS about, like, well, religious freedom. Some of our founding fathers were not Christian, which is true, but also the ones who were Christian did not want, religion and government mixed up together. So I don't know what the point of saying that is. One thing I took away from that conversation is that guy, the guy you just saw in the video. Okay, I don't mind that guy as much. I hate his ideas. I'm saying like that guy looks like he can have a conversation. The Vivek who shows up on debate stages is an insufferable jerk, for lack of better words. And it is so weird that when he's performing on stage, he's such a smug asshole. But one-on-one, he actually seems like just some guy you would have a debate with about whatever, and he's just on the losing end of all of it. But besides that, like, he acknowledged religious pluralism and shared values, but keep in mind, his idea of what our shared values are whatever conservative Christians think they are. Religious pluralism is acceptable to the government in his mind as long as they are promoting those Christian values. So, interesting. The reason I just wanted to put that out there, there is another part to the story, but the reason I wanted to put that out there is that's a good question that Justin was asking. And I'm kind of jealous of the fact that voters in Iowa or maybe New Hampshire or wherever one of those early states are where they're voting in the primaries, I love the fact that they have access to these people where you can ask them, you can press them on these issues. I wish more voters would press these candidates on these issues because I don't say this like the media is awful, but a lot of mainstream journalists who get access to these people, they never ask questions like this. And so kudos to Justin for trying to get an answer out of Vivek, even though the answer he got was typical Vivek BS. Now, here's the other part of that story. Later that same day, this is all on Thursday. Later that day, Vivek Ramaswamy went to the town of Waterloo, Iowa. And Justin had actually planned to go to that event, not really the first one. He was going to go to that Waterloo event with his own kids because he wanted them to have the experience of seeing a presidential candidate with their very eyes right in front of them. He wasn't planning on asking any questions. But toward the end of that event, someone else in the audience asked Ramaswamy a different question, which is this: will you fight to put the Bible first in the public school system? Will you fight to put the Bible first in the public school system? That question led to like a 6-minute response from Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm not going to play the whole thing for you, but I will show you like an edited clip of it, but I'll point out a couple things in advance. One is that I want you to listen for when he references Justin Scott in his response, because he does, with the understanding that Justin is literally in the room watching this all take place. And afterwards, Justin actually tries to get clarification on this question. So let me play this second clip. This is an edited version of what happened at Vivek Ramaswamy's second stop there.
Will you fight to put the Bible first in the public school system?
So I believe that we should revive faith in our public school system. Absolutely. I'll say something. I'm going to use this opportunity to tell you about our faith. And so I want to say what I think is the role of government officials, including the U.S. president. I don't think it's the job of the U.S. president, nor do I think I would be the best one who's qualified to be a pastor to spread Christianity throughout the country, being of a slightly different than traditional faith background. And Thomas Jefferson was in this category. He was a deist, actually, not a traditional Christian. And I think it helped him in the same way it'll help me reach a religiously pluralistic country. We actually have people of many different religions in this country. There was a guy who seemed to be a good conservative, but he came to an event earlier and he challenged me on this. He was an atheist and he was upset that I said God is real. But we worked it out to say that we will still stand for the same set of values that we want Americans to share in this country. And so my job is to swear an oath to that Constitution and keep it, which includes religious liberty. So that's the honest answer to your question, and I hope that addresses it. Thank you, young man. I appreciate it. I like your tie. That's good. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not atheist.
Oh, right.
I'm interested in his answer, and I don't feel like you gave it. Would you push to have Bibles in public school?
No, is the answer. I'm not going to push because it's not the job of the U.S. president to push it.
Okay, so a few things there. One is, remember that initial question was, will you fight to put the Bible in the public school system? He never answered that question directly, which is why Justin pressed him on it later. The other thing is that when Vivek Ramaswamy referenced Justin, he said there was this guy who came, he seemed to be a good conservative. I promise you, Justin is not a conservative, but he came to an event earlier and challenged me on this. He was an atheist and he was upset that I said God is real. That wasn't the issue. Vivek did not listen. The issue was not that he said God is real, it's that he wasn't appealing to non-Christians. And then he said, but we worked it out. You heard the conversation now. Did it sound like they worked it out? I asked Justin about that too. His response to me was, we did? That's news to me. But at the end of that thing, Justin yelled out from the back of the room, like, I'm interested in that guy's answer, and I don't feel like you gave it. Would you push to have Bibles in the public schools? And guess what? He got a straight answer from Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy said, no, is the answer. I'm not going to push it because it's not the job of the US president to push it.
The question I have that's bigger
About that. Now, I would say, do you believe Vivek Ramaswamy when he says, as president, he would never do that sort of a thing? No, I don't trust the guy for a second. I think he would totally do it if he thought he could get away with it. But that's besides the point. The point is, you have to press these Republicans on questions like this because it's going to come up. And again, Ramaswamy praised that whole exchange as like a healthy dialogue. But what happens later on when he starts saying we should have the Bible in public schools? Guess what? Now there's video of him saying, no, we shouldn't do that, which I know hypocrisy doesn't count for much these days. You can't really catch these people in the act, but like, it's something. And that we only got that answer because someone like Justin was there to call them out on it. One interesting side note, I was talking to Justin about that exchange. He told me that as soon as that conversation was over, and by the way, you didn't see it in the clip I just showed you, but Vivek Ramaswamy said, he enjoyed that exchange. It was a good conversation before he moved on to another question. The owner of the restaurant they were all in went up to Justin right after that and kicked him out of that room. According to Justin, the guy said, I have 5 undercover Waterloo police officers here. The tension is rising in the room, so we just need you to leave. I guess there was a reporter who asked that business owner for comment. He said no comment. Vivek Ramaswamy's team had no idea this even happened, so I'm not blaming them for this. But it is kind of funny that Justin has spent years asking Republicans and Democrats a lot of these pointed questions that challenge them on something that is a pretty big deal to a lot of voters. And this time, when he just asked for clarification on someone else's question, that's the time he got booted out of the town hall meeting. But he took it in stride. He actually shared with me one other thing here that I wanted to show you, which is he got a picture with Vivek later on. Isn't that adorable? I don't think Justin's going to vote for the guy, and I hope none of you are either. But again, I love the fact that you have voters able to challenge these people on this. I wish more, if you're an atheist and you live in Iowa and you have these candidates come into your backyard every day, please, if you have the opportunity, take it. Go to these meetings, ask a question, get it on camera and share it, because there's so many things they need to be pressed on. And CNN's not going to ask them about it. They're not going to go on MSNBC. So ask them if you get a chance. That's it. What other questions we got here? I'd ask him if he believes the BS that he spews. And the answer will be, yes, of course. Now, let me tell you about why I'm the best person who ever lived. And then 45 minutes later, the question will end. My question would be, if you had the opportunity to change the Constitution to allow a national belief, would you do it? Interesting. And then what would that belief be? Because I'm afraid, like, some of these people are like, well, as long as it's based in Judeo-Christian values, or like, is it going to be in God we trust? Which they think will leave the door open to people of all faiths, so it won't hurt them, even though it excludes an ever-growing number of Americans, So that's a great question. Stumble for a bit while they try to figure out an acceptable answer to that. I like that one. Vivek is Christian? No, Vivek is actually Hindu. But he knows, as well as everyone, that if you want to win a Republican primary, you have to at least pander to evangelical Christians. And he has been doing that. He talks about, yeah, I'm Hindu. I know it's different. I'm brown. However, I respect evangelicals and their faith and Judeo-Christian values. And I also believe God is real. And then he just spouts right-wing, conservative Christian talking points. and then he just kind of elides over the whole Hindu thing. He can't really get away from the Hindu thing, so he just acknowledges that, but then he pivots right-wing talking points. And honestly, I don't know that has hurt him in the primary as much as just being a smug asshole who's not named Donald Trump. So, other questions here. Fun fact, you only think transgenderism is a threat if you spend your time obsessing over trans people. Also, if you're so insecure about your gender, maybe try another one. I swear, no one thinks about what's between the pants of teenagers more than like right-wing Republicans. And that's like the only thing they think about. They love thinking about teenage genitalia. I've never thought of it like ever. But man, if you're like a Fox News viewer, it's the only thing on your mind every day, all the time. It's creepy. I think I can trace the initial groundwork of all this back to when I became... Oh, Spencer, you're responding to the question. Got it. Thank you. I think I can trace the initial groundwork of all this back to when I became agnostic in late 2018 after multiple extremely traumatic experiences. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What's part two of that? At about the same time, I met several people in the LGBTQIA plus community upon returning to college, and these were people who I truly grew to love and respect. Nice. Having broken the shackles that my Mormon faith had over my life, I was finally able to begin the process of rediscovering my values. The most important of which is this: I love other people so much more than an oppressive set of abusive rules. I'm still processing all this stuff, but I'm getting better, and I welcome what personal growth is still to come. That's wonderful, Spencer. Thank you for sharing that. I don't think that story is necessarily unique. Maybe the specifics are, but I've heard versions of that from so many people. It was getting to know people who you were taught to demonize, and then you realize, no, they're fine. I like them. They're really sweet. And then you learn more, and you realize what used to be taboo and you weren't supposed to think about it is actually fine. And then the dominoes start to fall. And so wherever you are in your journey at this point, good for you. I hope you can keep going. But thank you for sharing that. That's really wonderful. Someone at Spencer for me, I'm glad to hear they made it out. Spencer, I hope you see that. That's awesome. All right. I'm going to move to a different story involving Michigan. This also has a clip later on that I want to share with you. But let me try to make sense of this story by saying that a Michigan lawmaker says he plans to file legislation revoking the tax exemptions of all religious groups that he doesn't think are legitimate because they're non-theistic, which isn't just like Satanists, but also encompasses perhaps like Unitarians or whatever. Like there are a lot of non-theistic religious groups out there. All religious groups get these tax exemptions for being a religious group. He wants to take it away because he doesn't like Satanists. And why is he doing it? It's because of this that I'm about to share with you here. The Satanic Temple in West Michigan, this is what they put up recently outside the Capitol building. And you could see this like Happy Winter Solstice. The Satanic Temple, West Michigan, hopes your holiday and winter months are pleasant. Our annual Yule Goat is on display at the Michigan State Capitol through the Yule season. We hope many can make the pilgrimage and celebrate the Michigan congregations. ... Hail Satan, hail thyself. And this is the display that they have outside the state capitol. Isn't that lovely? So that is the display that they have outside the capitol. It's very nice. And the reason I mention that is because that altar of Baphomet, I think there's also a nativity scene outside the state capitol. And it's, you could see from the picture from a second ago, like it's not a controversial thing. It's like, yeah, the head is the goat head. Everything else looks perfectly holiday-ish. There's nothing controversial about the display. But you know by now that anytime Satan is attached to anything, conservatives can't handle it. Here's an example of that. There was a staffer for a Democratic congressperson, not congressperson, a state legislator, a staffer for a state legislator took a picture next to that display. And here's what she wrote. In the name of Satan, I claim the sexy satanic Baphomet goat altar at our Michigan Capitol. Amen. Obviously, she is joking, and that's just adorable. The right wing, like terroristic Twitter account, Libs of TikTok, they posted a screenshot of that joke saying that this lady supports, I don't know, Michigan House Democrats support Satan. The internet is forever. We took a picture of this. We saved the screenshot. Like, it was a joke. Calm down. But okay, in fact, uh, but that's the sort of right wing batshittery that happens whenever these satanic displays goes up. And here's what the Satanic Temple said about all this. Look at this. According to the group, they just enjoy the opportunity to celebrate their own beliefs. Just the opportunity for us to all gather and be able to celebrate the year and celebrate our own achievements and celebrate religious plurality. That's what it's all about for me, said Minister of Satan Bender Bones, which is a kick-ass name right there. That's fantastic. But like, again, look at what he's saying. That sounds normal and awesome. What are people so mad about? But they were mad. Here's another example of how insane some of these people got. A group of Republicans complained about it, and they wrote, this is Neil Frisky, who wrote a letter on behalf of 7 Republican lawmakers. And he said, today, myself and my colleagues signed a joint letter to the Michigan Capitol Commission requesting the removal of the satanic statue from the grounds of the Capitol. Evil has no place on the grounds of the Capitol. I won't read you the letter because it doesn't say anything that's any more revealing than that. What's evil? What is evil about that statue I just showed you? Nothing. There's nothing evil about it. They're celebrating the holidays. It's totally fine. But one of the people who signed on to that letter condemning the evil was a representative named Josh Shriver. And he also tweeted about this. He said on there, in the name of Jesus Christ, I rebuke the sadistic, satanic Baphomet goat altar at our Michigan Capitol. Amen. And I'm going to play for you that video because, again, these people are crazy.
Representative Josh Shriver here. Just wanted to share with you a disturbing thing that's going on the Capitol lawn. You essentially have a statue of Satan who lies, steals, kills, and destroys, authorized to appear on the Capitol steps during this Christmas season with a disclaimer from the Capitol itself. Right next to the nativity that celebrates the coming of the Savior of the world, Jesus Christ. And it's something that is disturbing to me because we swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, so help me God. We stand under the banner, in God we trust. We say the Pledge of Allegiance to a nation, one nation, under God. And at the end of the day, I wanted to leave this note to encourage you that it is finished, that Satan has been defeated by Christ, and we have every single reason to believe that the power belongs to the creator of the universe, to God, to Jesus Christ. And so as we head into Christmas, I just wanted to lift up your spirits and to say, even though it's very discouraging to see what's going on our Capitol lawn, that there is a reason to believe, there's a reason to have faith and to pursue the virtues, to pursue the fruit of the Spirit, peace, patience, joy, self-control, and there's power in the name of Jesus. And so I wanted to lift you up and to tell you that despite this discouraging state, that we can still have a Merry Christmas in Jesus' name. God bless you.
Two things about that. First of all, he's standing in front of a nativity. He's fine. His Christianity is fine. Second thing, I cannot believe a dude like that makes me long for the speaking ability of Vivek Ramaswamy. What the hell? Why are you making me like the other guy? And also, come on, dude, if you're going to film outside, deal with the sound a little better. But okay, so that's the sort of dude we are talking about. Christian persecution, just one of those guys who complains that Christians have it rough while he's standing in front of a Christian display outside the state capitol building. And none of that is even the thing I wanted to talk about, because the thing I wanted to talk about is what he said after that. Because according to Right Wing Watch this week, Josh Shriver appeared on a podcast or a radio show called Your Defending Fathers, whatever that means. But he pointed out that he's gonna file a bill very soon that targets churches that he doesn't think deserve the same treatment as Christianity. And here's what he said. There's no video to this, so I'm just going to show you what it says here. Again, I actually am working on a policy right now. I haven't introduced it yet, but it's actually to really focus on making a distinction between the Church of Jesus Christ, and this quote unquote Church of Satan. By the way, that wasn't Church of Satan. That's a different group. This is the Satanic Temple. Get it right, my God. You really have an issue where they're seen as equal in the eyes of the state. And that doesn't seem right to me for many, many legitimate reasons. They are not legitimate. And so removing tax-exempt status from non-theistic churches, such as the Church of Satan, I think is very, very well in order. This is why you don't elect 12-year-olds to state legislatures. Also, my God, all of you, you saw that dude. That guy got elected to state legislature. Why aren't all of you running for office if you live in a state where someone like that is your representative? You know you're smarter than that guy, and that guy won a race. What the hell? Come on, people. Just to be clear, the whole point of this tax-exempt status thing is that it applies to all nonprofit groups. You don't get to say, I'm going to give one nonprofit group tax-exempt status, and then I'm just going to say no to another one, even though they're playing by the same rules. You don't get to do it that way. You don't get to remove tax-exempt status from people who believe in the right religion, or like monotheism. Like, that's not how it works either, because you're just saying the government gets to decide which religions are the right ones, and you're going to punish everybody else. If he ever read the Constitution or took a history class or got like a D- in government, he might know some of that stuff, but he doesn't. But that's what this guy says he's doing. I can't wait to read the bill. I don't know that he's actually going to go through with it and file it, because the last thing you want is, a permanent reminder of your ignorance. It's one thing to say stupid stuff on a radio show you don't think anyone's listening to. It's a whole nother thing when you file a bill and we all see your name on the dumb thing that you wrote. But then in the same podcast, he went on to say another thing that was also kind of disturbing, but maybe not that surprising for a Christian nationalist like Shriver there. Here is that little bit. And again, there's no video here, so I'm just showing this to you. We have a duty to lead people as representatives who are appointed by God to make sure that we have a state that is not just good, not just great, but godly, Shriver declared. Honestly, I work for God and not for man. And so at the end of the day, I answer to one person, and that is Jesus Christ. Yeah, because he won his election by a vote of 1-0. And Jesus was the only person who showed up to vote. Like, dude, you're literally an elected official. You only work for the people who voted you into office and the constituents you now represent. If you think you work for God and not for people, you need a different line of work. It's not even that complicated. Listen, there are so many good, amazing Christian lawmakers who I respect, and they're wrong about the Christianity thing. So what? They're good at what they do. Why? Because they know they are there to help make everyone else's life better. This guy is like, none of those voters matter. I only answer to Jesus. What does Jesus want? Jesus wants me to hate the following groups of people. And then he runs and goes with that. This should bother Republicans too, not just us. And yet this guy, he's in a very solidly red district. He's a new member of the legislature. Odds are he would get elected as long as he wants to get reelected there. But also, I don't know why this sort of thing doesn't bother more Republicans, because they put up with this shit. They shouldn't. And I guess the one saving grace here is that Michigan has a Democratic governor. None of the, even if he wanted to pass a bill like this, because of the margins in the legislature, it would never get passed. But also the idea that this guy can just float that as an idea to revoke tax exempt statuses from groups he doesn't like, that should be condemned by Republicans. And yet I have yet to see any Republican say, of course we're not going to do that. This guy's an idiot. I'm ashamed to be in a committee with this guy. They haven't said it because they like these people, because that's who the Republican Party is. I'll stop there for a bit. Take any questions you have. While I am not allowed to comment on any political party or individual, I can say that such a law would be detrimental to tax-exempt organizations like ours, which is non-religious. No doubt. And I've said this before about tax exemptions. Like, people say we should revoke, like, let's tax the church. Let's revoke all church tax exemptions and stuff. And some of them deserve it because they break the IRS's rules. But really, the thing that would happen is nonprofit groups would lose their nonprofit status, not just churches. You can't just say, let's punish churches, but not, conservative secular groups or something like that. So all nonprofits would lose their tax exempt status. And that would be a horrible thing for our society, because we want nonprofit groups to exist. We want there to be groups that have a cause that they are fighting for, even if you don't like their causes. And if the incentive for them to do that is we won't tax you, I'm okay with that. I just wish the rules were fair and applied equally across the board. And they're not right now. Religious groups get a leg up. They don't have to file the same paperwork. As we know, evangelical megachurches can tell their congregations how to vote, something Planned Parenthood cannot do, and they get away with it. The IRS doesn't go after them. So, I want the rules to be fair. The answer is not to revoke tax exemptions overall. It's just to apply the rules fairly. I know that. But this idiot who's in elected office does not seem to know any of that. And that's frustrating. I had the FFRF send a legal request to do the prayer at the beginning of legislative sessions. It worked for about 2 months. Sorry, I can't read that. It's small. 2 months. We need to get these quacks out of government. Yeah, I mean, anyone can do that too. It's symbolic, but it is meaningful, which is you can ask your state lawmaker if they do invocations. You can ask your representative, hey, can you sponsor me? I want to do an invocation in the state capitol. And maybe they'll put in a request for you. Sometimes it takes an outside group to kind of put the pressure on, but no reason that shouldn't happen. If they have an invocation, it's nice to have alternative voices in there just to make everyone know that this isn't just for Christians. Lucy defeated Lucifer. Then why are you constantly scared, right? This guy is standing outside the Capitol saying, Satan has been defeated. Then what are you complaining about? Who cares that there's a satanic temple display outside the Capitol? How does that bother you? How does it hurt you? Of all the things that should trouble you in Michigan, like the state of the Republican Party in Michigan, which I think this weekend is voting to get rid of its chair because she just screwed them out of all the money. Maybe you should think about that and not the Satan display that is literally hurting nobody. You have better things to worry about. I don't know what you're mad about. My idea is that we pass a law that if any minister is proven to have made a false claim in the name of their God, that they forever lose their tax breaks, as do their donors. Yeah, let's run with it. Let's see what happens. Good luck trying to prove the lie in some cases, but that's the thing. You can't have these rules because you don't have the manpower to check on all these rules. But the whole point is, all the IRS has to do is apply the rules it already has, and we would actually be okay, relatively speaking. And they don't do that. But I like the idea that if churches were held to the same standards as we hold all these other organizations to, any other group to, they would be screwed, which is true, no matter how you want to slice it. Okay, I got one last story for you, then we'll call it a day. And this involves a congresswoman from Illinois. Her name is Mary Miller. And she said in a recent interview that the best elected officials are people who fear God. Why? Because only they believe that they will eventually be held accountable for their actions. it's such a messed up thing to say that we would all be better off if more Christians were in power because only they know how to do the right thing. Let me show you the clip and then I will come back to talking about this. This is Mary Miller talking to Christian hate group leader Tony Perkins in a weirdly, creepily empty room. And I don't know why that's their backdrop.
My goal is to be faithful before God each day with each opportunity that comes in place. And I want to encourage people to run for office. Local office holders, those are very important. And
well, we're seeing that with school board races
yes,
all across this country, how we are turning public education because parents are running for those school board seats.
School board, county board, sheriff, mayor, all very important positions. And, you know, we need people that fear God, that believe they can't hide from God, and ultimately they're going to give account to God. Those are the best people to hold positions, whether it's local or in the federal government.
Like, what the hell? Just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with encouraging people to run for office at any level. I am encouraging you to do that too. A lot of very thoughtful, smart people talk themselves out of doing just that. But the idea that we are better off with godly people, and let's be clear, she is only referring to other Christians like herself. That's not just a bigoted statement to make. It's totally untrue. Like, Mary Miller is living proof that Christians are not sending their best, right? Her comments effectively say that atheists should be shut out of politics, at least in theory, if not in law, because, you know, we don't have any morals. We don't have any moral standard. We can't possibly do the right thing. She also really doesn't want Muslims or Jews or even progressive Christians in power either, because it's not like she thinks we're better off with President Joe Biden, who is a devout Catholic. She doesn't think that's good, right? And here's an example of some of the stuff she said, because she is an insane one. The far left atheist quest for power has, I don't know why that's necessarily in quotations unless Lauren Boebert said it there, but the far left atheist quest for power has created a mental health crisis, a drug addiction crisis, a crime wave, and a homelessness crisis. Why doesn't the New York Times cover what leftists have done in all these cities? I'm not the first to say this, but there are plenty of red states and red cities that have higher crime rates than any of the places she just mentioned. But this idea that atheists are in charge of these places, I promise you, as someone who covers atheists for a living, that is news to me, because I promise you the leaders of those cities are very religious people themselves. And who's stopping us from addressing a lot of those crises? I'm not saying Democrats deserve a lot of credit on a lot of these issues, but I know for a fact that Republicans have hindered progress on a lot of those issues. So what the hell is she talking about? Here's another example of how batshit crazy she can get. This is from Christmas Eve a year ago. This Christmas Eve, please join me in praying for the Christians being persecuted by the Biden Department of Justice for peacefully praying outside of abortion clinics. Pray for an end to abortion and a return to a government that upholds our constitutional right to peacefully pray and protest. She's mad because they were not just praying peacefully. Some group of people were trying to block an abortion clinic and they got punished for it, and she's mad about that. That's who Mary Miller is. But again, if you've heard of Mary Miller, it's not because of those tweets. It's because of something very different. It's because on January 5th, 2021, just the day before that little insurrection attempt, she showed up at a rally and she quoted Hitler. And here's an example of a headline that talked about this. Illinois Congresswoman says Hitler was right on one thing. I promise you, that didn't go over well. That's the only thing she was known for. And then, making it even better, Mary Miller, after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, she gave a celebratory address, and she got in the news because she made a big slip. Let me show you the headline because, again, oh my God. Representative Mary Miller calls Roe decision victory for white life. And she She says later, you guys, I was trying to say right to life. It just slipped, and I accidentally made a racism. That's Mary Miller for you. That's the best version of what Christians have going for them, according to her, because you need people like her in office, right? And again, forget even the religious aspect. Let's say all of those things are slips of the tongue because she doesn't know how to do the talking. She's also not good at her job. Like on paper, she's not good at her job. This is an article from a local newspaper that basically pointed out how Illinois lawmakers, like Congress people, had gotten a lot of money for their respective districts because all Congress members do. You can put in the appropriations bill. I need $1 million for this project in my district. I need $2 million for transportation issues in my district. And this is what this article said in the News Gazette here. Let me show you this here. But those in the 15th congressional district represented by Mary Miller are shut out again. No community project funding dollars are going to any part of the huge area, more than a third of the state in Miller's district. As a member of the conservative House Freedom Caucus, Miller pledged to oppose community project funding, earmarks, or any other euphemism for what has long been known as pork barrel spending. Fine, but what good is it to your constituents if everyone else is getting dinner and you're not, but you're still helping pay the bill? Which is absolutely right. Her constituents pay taxes just like everybody else, but because they have a crappy congresswoman in place, they don't get any of the benefits that Congress could easily give them to help improve their lives. And this goes back to a theme of every episode of this live stream, which is that Republicans are in power to make your lives worse. Mary Miller is the epitome of that. And yet, she goes on these interviews and she's like, you know what we need in Congress? More people like me, because I believe in God. And that's the only person I listen to, because she sure as hell isn't listening to constituents. And again, Illinois, by the way, is a gerrymandered state. It's gerrymandered in favor of Democrats. And that's a good thing for the country. If you want to get rid of gerrymanders, get rid of them all across the country. It would hurt Republicans in the long run. But again, she's not at risk of losing her seat because she represents a bunch of mostly white evangelical conservatives who think Democrats are evil. And so, of course, they're going to vote for people like her. And they never consider the fact that they're screwing themselves over by voting for Christians like her. And these are the same people, by the way, who are going to vote for Trump in 2024. They don't care. By the way, Mary Miller says we need more Christians in office. Who's the guy that she's going to endorse? And she celebrated his endorsement of her. It's Donald Trump, the thrice married racist who paid hush money to porn stars he was having an affair with when his current wife was pregnant with his 5th child. The guy who faces 91 criminal charges, the sexual abuser, the 2 Corinthians guy, the guy who bragged about grabbing women without consent because he's a celebrity, the guy who lies about everything, the guy who says he doesn't need forgiveness, the guy who couldn't name his favorite Bible verse in an interview, the guy who held up a Bible in front of a church after his team used tear gas to drive away peaceful protesters. That's their idea of a Christian that they all ought to support. Like, there isn't a single white evangelical church in America who would hire Donald Trump to be their pastor, at least if they wanted to be taken seriously. But more than half of Republican voters, most of whom would probably describe themselves as conservative Christians, they seriously believe Trump is a person of faith. And Mary Miller, who quoted Hitler and celebrates white life and can't do her job well, she's also saying, yep, you need people like us. We're the good ones. Like, it's not that Christians can't be good public servants. As I said before, there are plenty of them who are. It's that Christians like Mary Miller are wholly unsuited for the job of representing the people in their district. Because if someone feels that they are accountable only to God and not accountable to the voters, then they're going to make bad decisions. They don't deserve to be in public office. And by the way, the guy interviewing her, Tony Perkins, his own background involves dabbling with white supremacy, which he denies, and posing in front of the Confederate flag, which he can't deny because there are pictures of that. Did he ask her about any of this? Did he point out the hypocrisy? Of course he didn't, because he's an interviewer who works for the Christian right. He is a Christian right guy. He doesn't think anything she said was a problem. He's fawning over her instead of actually interviewing her. She's never accomplished anything worth praising. So naturally, all he does is praise her. But again, as awful as he is and as awful as she is, Mary Miller is an elected office. Why? Because people like her think they need to be in elected office. And a lot of people way smarter than both of them talk themselves out of it because they don't think they're absolutely perfect. So I'm just saying, run for local office, at least if you can. You would do so much better than these horrible, horrible people. Because especially in Congress, US Congress, when people like her get elected, every single one of us pays the price for her ignorance and her inability to do anything useful. I think I'll stop there. If there are any other last second questions, I'll get to those. The room is symbolic of their ideas, empty and echoey. Thank you, Den. I agree fully. I had to look it up. Hitler never even said the thing she said he was right about. So she quoted Hitler for funsies, not even because she looked it up. Not only is she incredibly uneducated, she's historically wrong. She can't even get her fascism right. Man. If that's the last one, thank you all for joining me here. Thank you to Den for helping out with moderation. I'll just say, as I always do, you could support this channel by going right here to patreon.com/Hemant. And I'll be back next week. We'll go through some more stories. Thanks for staying up with me here tonight. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your holidays. If you're still on break, if you're going back to school, whatever it is. And I'll see you next week.